Hello children, it's time to learn history. Today our lesson is defining history. It is a first midterm lesson. We should learn from page number 1 to page number 6. What are we going to learn from this lesson? We can learn what is history, how to study history, benefits of learning history, and how does history measure time. Do you know about our ancient people? And do you know what did they do? People have been living on this earth for a long time. They have lived in different parts of the world, and they have changed the environment with their necessities, and they have maintained relationships with each other. They all are like a story. These all past events, they are like a story. So, do you know what is history? Story that describes past events is history. What is history? Story that describes past events is history. Now I am going to tell you some past events. Check whether you know about them. Have you seen your grandfather's father? Can you remember him? And do you know elders who served your village? Have you seen them? And do you know how your school was built? Yes, I know. You haven't seen them with your own eyes, but you know about them. How did you get to know about those things? There are so many sources which help us to know about these things. Let's see what are those sources. We haven't seen our ancestors. We were not there when those past events happened. But we know about them. How do we know about those past events? Some people, some sources, they help us to know about our past events. Who are those people? What are those sources? Let's see. Teachers. Teachers are teaching us about the Sri Lankan history and world history. They help us to know about more information about the history of our country and the history of the world. Parents. Parents are helping us to know about the past events of our family and even the past events of our village. Books and articles. By reading books and articles, we can collect more information about past events of our country and past events of the world. If you need to see the throne of our past kings and the clothes they wore and even coins they used, then what should you do? Yes, we can go to the museum and see those things with our own eyes. These are the sources and these are the people who help us to know about our history. Sources of learning history. What are the sources which help us to learn history? Some books and some statues, coins, they help us to learn history. So these sources can be divided into two categories. First one is literary sources. Second one is archaeological sources. What are these literary sources? Literary sources means books, articles, maps. Some examples for literary sources: Deepavamsa, Mahavamsa. Deepavamsa is considered as the oldest literary source in Sri Lanka. Literary sources can be divided into two, as local literary sources and foreign literary sources. The books which have been written by local authors or Sri Lankan authors are known as local literary sources, and the books which have been written by foreign authors are known as foreign literary sources. Some foreign authors, they have come to Sri Lanka and collected facts about Sri Lanka and wrote about Sri Lanka. But some foreign authors, they have heard about Sri Lanka from others and wrote about Sri Lanka. Next category is archaeological sources. Examples: Galviharaya, Panakaduwa copper plate. Coins, sculptures, statues, ruins, antiques, they all come under archaeological sources. These archaeological sources can be found by excavating. So, what are the sources of learning history? There are two categories, as literary sources and archaeological sources. What is the oldest literary source in Sri Lanka? Yes, it is Deepavamsa. Why do we learn history? That is a common problem. Let's see what are the benefits of learning history. First thing is, now the environmental pollution is a common problem. We are facing this common problem as a result of utilizing insecticides and chemical manure. But in the past, did they face this environmental pollution? No, they didn't face to this problem. How? Because of the methods they used in agriculture. So to reduce environmental pollution today, we can take their methods in practice when we are doing agriculture. To take those methods in practice, we should learn history to know what were the methods they used. So the first benefit is use the message given by ancient people to make our future better. Can you see the letters? Yes, familiar letters are there as a letter in Sinhala and ka letter in Sinhala. Can you see how did these two letters evolve into the present state? Yes, clearly we can see. How can we know the evolution of these letters? Yes, by studying history, by learning history. So, the next benefit is to understand how the things that we see and hear at present came into existence. If you can remember, in the beginning I asked from you, have you seen or do you know how your school was built? If we know the history of our school, then we can know how did it build, and there we can understand how our school built and how did it come to the present situation. Sometimes we need a guidance to solve our problem and to success our future. By learning history, we can gain a good understanding of the success and failures of our ancestors. So we can have a guidance to solve the problems that we face today. That is the next benefit of learning history. Can have a guidance to solve the problems that we face today. We all like to develop our country. To develop our country, we should learn history. Why did I tell like that? Because to have an understanding of how our future should be and how our country can be developed in the future, we should have a good knowledge about our past events. Then we can avoid by doing the same mistake that was done by our ancestors, and we can follow the good things they did. So these are the benefits of learning history. Use the message given by ancient people to make our future better, to understand how the things that we see and hear at present came into existence, can have a guidance to solve the problems that we face today, and to have an understanding of how our future should be and how our country can be developed in the future. When we study history, it is very important to measure the time accurately. There are some methods to measure the time of history, but usually we are using two methods, BC and AD. BC means before Christ, AD means Anno Domini. These two methods are based on the year of birth of Jesus Christ. The time period before the birth of Jesus Christ is BC or before Christ. The time period after the birth of Jesus Christ is AD or Anno Domini. Let's see some examples for this. Arrival of Arahat Mahinda Thero. Arahat Mahinda Thero arrived in Sri Lanka 250 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. Before the birth of Jesus Christ. So it should be BC or AD. Yes, it should be BC. Because before the birth of Jesus Christ. So before Christ, BC. How many years before the birth of Jesus Christ? 250 years. So it is measured as 250 BC. Then Arahat Mahinda Thero arrived in Sri Lanka 250 BC. Next, what is this? Yes, this is Minneria tank. Who built it? Yes, it was built by King Mahasen. King Mahasen lived in 274 years after the birth of Jesus Christ. After the birth of Jesus Christ. So it should be BC or AD. Yes, it should be AD. After the birth of Jesus Christ. So it should be Anno Domini. How many years? 274 years. So it should be 274 AD. 274 AD. There are some other methods also to measure the time of history. Especially Sri Lanka and India, they are using other two methods to measure the time of history as Buddhist years and Saka years. You can see these two methods at your home. How? Because these two methods have been mentioned in almanacs in your home. Have you seen them? Now you can go and check. Right. What is this Buddhist years? Buddhist years start since the date of Mahaparinibbana of Lord Buddha. Usually we believe that the Mahaparinibbana of Lord Buddha happened 544 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. Before the birth of Jesus Christ. That means BC. So, what is it? 544 BC. Saka years. This system is a calendar of Hindus. Do you know who started this system? This system was started by the king Gautamiputra Satakarni. He ruled the western India and he started this system in memory of the victory gained over the areas of the Saka people. It was happened in 78 AD. What are these two methods? Buddhist years and Saka years. Who used those? Sri Lankans and Indians. Muslims also use another method to measure the time of history. It is Hijri years. It started in 622 AD. It was the year in which Prophet Muhammad, he was the leader of the Islam religion, he arrived in the city of Medina from Mecca. It was 622 AD. The method was called Hijri years. In addition to these methods, there are some other methods which used to calculate the time in laboratories. Time can be calculated by digging the earth systematically. It is known as archaeological excavation. When we excavate the earth, we can see the soil layers under the earth. We can find out various things which belong to the past and did not decay easily. They have deposited on these soil layers. More ancient things have deposited on the lowest layer of the soil, and things belonging to the recent past are deposited on the higher layers of the soil. These people are excavating to find out things in these soil layers. These are the things we can find out by excavating. They are called archaeological excavations. Let's see the time in which some historical events took place. The first one is Sri Lanka became an independent country. Do you know the year? Yes, it is 1948. It happened before the birth of Jesus Christ or after the birth of Jesus Christ? Yes, after the birth of Jesus Christ. So it is 1948 AD. The beginning of King Vasubha's rule. It was happened 67 years after the birth of Jesus Christ. 67 years after the birth of Jesus Christ means Anno Domini. So 67 AD. Buddhist years. Demise of Lord Buddha. Yes, it is 1 Buddhist years. Birth of Jesus Christ. 544 years. 544 Buddhist years. Very good. Shall we check whether we can remember the things we learnt? First we learnt what is history. History is the story that describes past events. Next, we learnt the sources of learning history. What are the sources? Two main categories are there. They are literary sources and archaeological sources. Then we learnt the benefits of learning history. At last we learnt how does history measure time? Methods we learnt are BC and AD, Saka years, Buddhist years, and Hijri years. Now you can answer these questions. What is history? Explain the benefits of studying history. What are the two types of sources which are useful to study history? What is the meaning of AD, BC? Define Buddhist years. Thank you, children. Let's meet with a new lesson.